Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello, everyone. I just finished recording a powerful episode with a mentor of mine, Kristina Marie, and it is so full of wisdom, of heart, and creative juice. And pretty much the whole time, I just had one epiphany after another hearing Kristina speak. So I really want to share it with all of you right away. And to introduce her, because we basically just jumped straight into the conversation, Kristina Marie is a transformational story mentor, a developmental editor, intuitive soul guide, and creative strategist. And I was initially introduced to Kristina by her partner in life, in love, and in mission, Aaron Rose, who was on the podcast on the last episode, basically. I experienced Kristina as someone who is both deeply in touch with her own creative prowess and who's also deeply skilled as an intuitive and as a guide. In her work, Kristina facilitates spaces for people who want to be on the journey of telling their own transformational stories and sharing that work, be that in the format of a book or a memoir or a music album, in ways that feel truly aligned with their design, with their energy, and with their soul. In the past, Kristina has worked as a journalist and as an editor at New York Times, among many other publications. So her work and this really unique intersection of her experience in publishing, her own vocation and practice and as a writer, and her devotion to the divine is really special and powerful and needed. I do want to let you know that if you're listening to this conversation in October 2025, Kristina is running a group program called Story Map. So this is for those of you who feel a soul calling to know more about your own transformational story and to create the outline of that story so that you can then use that as a foundation, as the root for supporting your process of writing that book or creating that music album. Applications will be open until October 20th, and I highly recommend you check that out if her voice and her work resonate with you. I'll make sure that all the links are in the show notes below. Okay, here is my conversation with Kristina Marie. I hope you enjoy this really profound conversation. Well, welcome to the podcast, Kristina. This is a long time coming. Um, since the first time we met through your partner in life, love, and mission, Aaron Rose, I have been wanting to have you on the podcast. So this is a dream come true for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited for our journey
Yeah.
today and to
Hmm.
dive in with you. So thank you for having me.
Of course. I have been a grateful recipient of your embodied wisdom and your deep attunement. And I want to start, I want to just jump right into the heart of what we wanted to talk about, which was in one of your emails to me when we were discussing the potential of having this conversation, you wrote, "The hero is dead." And I want to begin there. I want to ask you, what do you mean by that, Christina?
That's such a
There
great place
may
to
be,
start.
yeah. I love when that came through, and I was like, oh, it kind of shocked me. Um, yeah, and I'm wanting to hear from you. I think the perspective I'm going to bring in here is, um, it is no surprise that so many of us are aware of and noticing this collective upheaval that's been going on, right? And in my own life, in the lives of people I work with, what I'm seeing time and time again is this pattern of individuals currently overcoming great personal challenges, right? A health diagnosis, maybe the death of a loved one, financial downturn, and they themselves are moving through their own kind of version of in their minds, um, the hero's journey or the heroine's journey. So when you brought in this phrase, the hero is dead, it makes me wonder, yeah, what do you mean, Christina?
I love this. It's such a great conversation, and the examples that you brought forward actually are a great lead into what's what's the difference between the hero's journey and the heroine's journey. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people either misunderstand this or have sort of conflated, um, a hero's journey equaling, you know, a man on a quest.
Hmm.
Um, and I think part of what's confusing about all of this, it's like there's, the difference between a hero's journey and a heroine's journey is not it's narrative, let's say, right? It's not about biological sex, it's not about gender, it's archetypal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a kind of a difference in really the narrative structure. And
Yeah.
so the hero, I'll just start by kind of giving some examples of the differences. And this can be really helpful for people. Some of the examples you gave initially, a health diagnosis or, loss of a loved one.
Mm.
Those are examples actually of more of a heroine's journey.
Mm.
Um, because overall, you know, if we think about each of those journeys being a different stage of individuation, they're each necessary, within our evolution, within our growth. And yet, if we're circling, one classroom, one curriculum, and sort of not allowing ourselves to move to the next phase of growth, and that's what I see a lot with the hero's journey elements, and just how we've been conditioned, culturally within society, especially in the West, to kind of a hero worship of the hero's journey,
Yeah.
and pedestaling that and making that, of more value. And that goes for that kind of structure in itself, which I'll talk about some differences here. But it also goes for this, it's almost like a value that we put on the masculine qualities, the masculine principles, the masculine quest, the do it yourself, go it alone, kind of chosen one that saves the world, this singular victory, this conquering of the challenge, the enemy. All of those things are important in that early stage of
Mm.
individuation when we're establishing the I, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's more about, in that stage of individuation, we must establish that that I and kind of, that call in the hero's journey is more of a voluntary thing. It's saying, okay, think of it like, I don't know, leaving your house, as a teenager or something, whenever it is you sort of fly the nest
Mm.
and that's an intentional, I mean, there can be sort of involuntary versions of that, of course. And I'm going to be generalizing in a certain sense here just to kind of give people a sense of these different archetypal aspects. But in general, the call for the hero is voluntary. It's the hero saying the part of ourselves that wants to self-actualize, that wants to establish the I, be the individual, prove their worth, stand alone, build that strength, right?
Mm.
That's the part of us that says, I'm ready for this quest. I'm going. I don't
Yeah.
know what's ahead, but I'm making the choice to set out and answer this call, right? And the strength that we're building in that, it's important for us to sort of be an individual, be singular in our victory, to be kind of, to acquire that skill or that experience, or to achieve something, to overcome something on our own. That's part of how we build that individuality, that identity, that strength, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
motivation for the hero is that sort of development of the identity, the power, oftentimes it can also be kind of more archetypally about some kind of retribution, right? Some kind of justice that the hero is fighting for.
Yeah.
But the power structure, it requires more of a hierarchical design.
Mm.
And, there's a kind of, the purpose of that quest is like, I'm defeating the enemy. I'm, you know, I'm maybe putting my own life on the line to, vanquish
Hmm.
whatever that is, and to acquire the boon, right? To,
Yeah.
what does the hero bring back from that quest? That I that is established, this sense of worth, of achievement, and this kind of boon that they're bringing back to share with the community,
Mm.
right? So we think of this more as like, okay, I've slayed the dragon,
Yeah.
right? And what do I bring back? I bring back the kind of the trophy, the victory, the flag, right? Um, and in contrast, the heroine, right? And again, this isn't about biological sex or gender. It's not about men or women. It's really about these principles,
Mm.
masculine principle of creation, feminine principle of creation, and these different muscles and motivations and sort of strengths and skills that we're building in different parts of the journey, right? So if all we're doing is kind of looping in this hero's journey, more proving, more acquisition, more building of the I, more doing it myself, standing alone, being this individual against the world, being, going to the top of the mountain, seeking the top of that hierarchical structure. Yes, that is a story that you can track through many thousands of years of myth, although there are others. And, that is part of what Joseph Campbell brought forward in terms of the hero's journey and this kind of mono myth. Not everything falls into that category,
Mm.
right? There
Hmm.
is more beyond that story. That's just the beginning. But if we remain there, right? And imagine sort of only ever working your leg muscles.
Yeah.
Never, it's like, you might be able to climb a mountain and, run a marathon if you've been working your leg muscles for 2000 years, but if you've never lifted, a 1 pound weight and your arms have just been completely atrophied, there's a part of you that's not developing. There's a part of you that's kind of arrested in that evolution, right?
Yeah.
If we're not continuing that archetypal evolution, that narrative sort of growth. And so, in contrast, right, the heroine's journey is also not about a woman taking the hero's journey,
Mm.
right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so when Maureen Murdoch developed this, she was a student of Joseph Campbell's, and kind of her hypothesis, or her challenge to him going into this was saying, look, I feel like this is different for women.
Mm.
And at the time, that was a very revolutionary thought and sort of counter to what he was establishing, culturally. And again, it's still a kind of narrow analysis. Not everything fits into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, as
Because
she,
what he was saying was basically that the heroine is always there, right? Has
right,
been there all along. Hmm.
right. So he's sort of seeing the feminine principle in this case as, more of the place, the setting, the location where the hero is attempting to get to, right?
Mm. Hmm.
So this idea of the feminine principle as, she's with him all along, she being this kind of feminine principle, she, quote unquote, doesn't need to take the quest, right? And this is kind of what he
Mm.
relayed to Maureen Murdoch in a sense
Hmm.
was, you know, the feminine is sort of the unseen within all of it. And while that is sound on a certain level, it's missing something,
Hmm.
right? It's missing the next phase of individuation. So for instance, if we just kept circling through, I don't know, elementary school, and we're in our second half of life going back through that curriculum over and over again, right? We're missing a part of our own initiation, evolution, integration, right? And so as Maureen Murdoch established the heroine's journey, and there have been other iterations since, she sort of established what she saw as here's how it's different for women.
Mm.
And, that even that is a kind of, there's a certain derivative there, which is saying we're still in this man's world. We're still in this patriarchal structure. We're still in this society, in this culture that has a value assignment on the masculine principle qualities hero archetypally as the best,
Yeah.
the more worthy,
Yeah.
the right. And so within that structure, she's saying, well, for women who are in this landscape of myth, here's how it looks different,
Mm.
right? And so she goes into more of, she talks a lot about what she calls the father's daughter, which is a kind of feminine attunement
Mm.
to those same masculine goals, values, qualities, right? And
Right.
so
Right. In
it's
response to the hero's journey, essentially.
exactly. And
Hmm.
and that as a kind of setting, just imagine that as, okay, this is the movie we're all in, right?
Right.
Everyone's in the summer blockbuster where these qualities are overexpressed to like a ridiculous degree.
Yeah.
This is what's cool. This is what's valuable. This is what it means to quote unquote make it or to get the victory or, whatever it is. And so her version was, hey, this, here's another way that this looks, but it's still kind of, it's still within the set in a certain way of that hero's journey, right?
Mm. Hmm.
And so to me, some of the qualities of how that heroine's journey is different when we have an overexpressed masculine principle in the hero's journey and a kind of repressed feminine, right?
Mm.
Those qualities, those um, elements of who we all are, right? This is also why it's not about being a man or being a woman or any of that. It's this is all within us, and the heroine's journey helps us see more of that, right? So the
Yeah.
call for the heroine is more involuntary. It's
Mm.
more imposed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of the loss of a loved one or even, a health diagnosis or, a financial loss or our house burning down
Yeah.
or, anything that is seemingly imposed upon us, right? That is not our voluntary, like, I'm going on the quest, off I go. I've
Yep.
packed my pack and I'm ready, right? And that is more of, how do we begin this archetypally? That seeker archetype is part of the hero, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That we need that initiatory building of the I. We
Mm.
need that quest to say, hey, I am going to establish who I am and move through these tests and trials, but I'm making that choice as part of my growth and evolution, right?
Mm.
And so if we
Mm-hmm.
think of the hero as, okay, there's all this armor that the hero's built in establishing that I, the heroine's journey comes more unexpectedly, right?
Mm.
And it is a kind of more involuntary call, like when we think about the story of Persephone.
Yeah.
She's, you know, kidnapped in a way.
Yeah.
she's pulled down into the underworld and
Mm-hmm.
then she's navigating from there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's a kind of loss or a lot of the more thematic qualities of the heroine's journey are more about they're less about that kind of survival aspect of the hero or that kind of seeker archetype and they're more there's something more about belonging. It's
Mm.
more about that fracture of whether it's the family, whether it's a relationship, whatever it may be, it's a kind of shattering in a
Yeah.
way, right? It requires the hero to drop the armor
Mm.
and all those strengths and everything that masculine principle has valued and built and what we've been conditioned especially in the west as this is what it means to fill in the blank, to
Mm-hmm.
succeed, to be strong, to be valuable, to be worthy, whatever. So as the hero drops that armor, the heroine's journey is more of that. It's an inner quest.
Mm-hmm.
It's you know something that is our strength does not come from our isolation or individuality. There's
Yeah.
there's strength in numbers. This is about us coming into community. It's not the
Mm.
kind of rescuer, you know, single, one person who saves them all. It's like we're all in this together.
Yeah. It's not slaying the dragon.
Right. And in the difference here is befriending the dragon,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the heroine, again, this is all of us. And what's so important, why I focus a lot on helping people understand this more symbolically, archetypally, narratively, is because as humanity as a species, this planet, like we are in the part of the greater cycle where we are in the heroine's journey.
Mm.
And so if
Yeah.
people aren't locating themselves in this kind of descent that we're in, right? This loss of those structures of
Yeah.
of everything that we have identified with or that's made sense to us or that we've been conditioned to believe or to the different ways we see ourselves, right? Then we're we're not building the right muscles. We're not seeing ourselves or the story that we're living correctly,
Yeah.
right? And so we can't navigate that if we don't know where we are,
Mm.
if we don't know who we are, or sort of what part of the evolution we're living. And so there's a kind of anachronistic, like I just imagine, I don't know, like a Greek Olympian or something
Mm.
who's
Hmm.
like busting into, I don't know, a cacao circle or, something where it's just like, you're on the wrong set. Like, we're
Yeah.
doing something different here.
Yeah.
And there's a different kind of victory here, right? This
Yeah.
is not hierarchical. It's more hierarchical,
Hmm.
right? And this is kind of how we get to make a Gene Keys reference. It's like the heterarchy is what allows us to be in the synarchy, right?
Mm.
Of this, where we all have our established I, we all are in our unique gifts,
Yeah.
in our unique genius, and there's a self-organizing leadership that occurs when we're all playing our part and when we're all fully embodied in the fullness of who we are. And that's what the heroine's journey is about. it's
Yeah.
it's about wholeness.
Mm.
It's not about power.
Yeah.
The power is shared. It's not about revenge or glory, right? It's seeking collaboration,
Yes.
balance, compromise, connection,
Hmm.
belonging,
Hmm.
unity,
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
And so in the hero's journey, we need to build that I. That's important. But then when we shift into this new kind of evolution of the heroine's journey, it requires different skills from us.
Hmm.
And, it allows us to meet different parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's that me, quote unquote, that we've established in the hero that's now in relationship with the we, right? Within
Yes.
this heroine's kind of structure. And, the strength is in numbers here.
Mm.
And so it is about delegating, asking for help, allowing other people to be empowered in their gifts, in their quest
Yeah.
of that journey within, right? And so rather than the kind of self actualization of the hero, this is more about self discovery, self knowledge, the wholeness within ourselves, and sharing that journey in a way that it's like we each need to make that journey within on our own, right? It's no one else can face our shadows for us. And yet we are all kind of in circle on our own journey together,
Yes.
right? And there's something, there is a descent that's
Mm.
required. There is a loss, there is a death to the old ways, what we've known of ourselves, what we've known of these structures. And if we're not orienting to that correctly and we're thinking we're crazy or we're thinking, we're kind of narrowly approaching that without the wider kind of archetypal, mythical, symbolic sense of, hey, this is part of why I'm here, right? To
Yeah.
face the depth of what's within me, including those shadows, right? And including whatever my version of the dragon is within me, not outside of me,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. I have a couple questions for you. The first one is this is actually making me think about the Percival myth.
Mm-hmm.
And, basically in the myth, there are many different versions and variations,
Yes.
but to put simply, at the beginning, Percival left home, right, and then went on a very classic hero's journey.
Yes.
Learn how to fight, learn how to win the princess, but somewhere along the way, he came across a kingdom, and the king was very sick, and he was just confused. He was like, "Why is this king sick?" And then later he found out that uh, through the counsel of the witch, right, that he had made the wrong turn, and he essentially realized that he was supposed to tend to this wounded king. And then later, when he re-encountered the Fisher King, he did ask the question, "What aileth thee?" Right? And that to
Yes.
me is the heroine's journey portion of his story of going within and finding that curiosity, finding, essentially a return to wholeness is what I'm hearing as you were
Yes.
speaking. Would you say that that's kind of an accurate example of
Yeah.
the contrast between the 2? Hmm.
What's I love that you're bringing this, and this is also a big Richard Rudd talks about this myth a lot, within the Gene Keys transmission, and he relates it, to our pearl sequence,
Mm.
to
Mm.
our service to all,
Yeah.
right? And what that requires before we reach the pearl, right? Without going too deep into the Gene Keys, because we'll be in a whole other deep dive world there if we
That's part
open that
2.
door, we
That's
know
part
where we're
2.
going. Part two, next. Tune in next time for
Yes.
our Gene Keys deep dive. But what I want to bring here is that, in order for Percival to ask that question of the Fisher King and to also see, not only was the king ailing, what else was ailing? The land.
Yes.
It was barren, right?
Yes.
The kingdom, the people gone.
Mm.
And so he's isolated in this wound, right? And Percival coming to tend to him and to ask this question, it's a service that's beyond himself. It's not, hey, I want to just slay the dragon and get out of here and go back and get my gold and
Right.
the lady.
Hmm.
There's something beyond him that he's serving. But
Yeah.
what's required first? The opening of the heart. That's the Venus sequence.
Mm.
And to
Hmm.
me, the heroine's journey is more about that. It's about coming into our heart, our wholeness, our wounding, and being able to, within ourselves, once we face that, the only way we can step into that grail question that Percival is asking, how can I be of service beyond myself, right? To
Yes.
this king, to this kingdom, to this wider benefit of all. But what's required before we can, right? Because from the Venus sequence, we're going into that core wound and into our depths and into those shadows to reveal the gift in order for us to ask that question and to me, I kind of see that as the transition into more of the new myth, which is what I see sort of the third stage beyond the heroine's journey, which, archetypally, if we're thinking about the hero as the seeker, the heroine, you could see that as a kind of a healer archetype. You could also see it as an alchemist.
Yeah.
It's really about going within, transmuting, seeing, witnessing, loving those parts of ourselves that are wounded, that are exiled,
Mm.
right? Like the Fisher King, exiled in that wound. The only, the way we open to that is belonging, community, opening our heart to something beyond ourselves. But we have to do that within ourselves to even ask that question, right? So we
Yes.
can't move into the pearl sequence, into our service to all, into more of that. Within the heroine, we come into a kind of wholeness and integration of our inner masculine and feminine, of our humanity, right? Who we are as human beings and the totality of that. And in the new myth, we move into the mystic, that
Mm.
archetype. And what is that? That's a divine union.
Mm.
That's a direct experience of the divine, God, creation, life. And in order for us to move into that phase, we need to have touched that humanity within ourselves, that totality, that wholeness, and it's not a one and done. This isn't a linear thing where we just do the hero, do the heroine, do the mystic, we're
Yes.
good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the
It
the
would be
movie would be
nice.
over by now if that's all we needed to do.
That would be nice.
Um, but I'm kind of, I lay it out this way just to sort of highlight the evolution here so we can locate ourselves correctly, right? And so for Percival to ask that question, his heart needs to be open, his own, right? That's his heroine's journey in a sense, and it's also the
Yeah.
beginning of his mystic's journey,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
still more for him to integrate within himself, and yet his heart needs to be open enough to, right? And even thinking of the witch or the oracle or the feminine archetypal character that's what leading him back to the all, to his service, to his heart, something beyond the quest that he began
Mm.
for that outer, right? Find the grail.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately that the quest, there's a great Carol Pearson quote. She has a lot of amazing archetypal um books and created actually a great archetypes test called the
Mm.
PMAI,
Mm.
Pearson Mar Archetypes Index, where you can kind of answer questions and see where you are archetypally, where you
Yeah.
are in the story you're living. But there's a quote from her where she says, it's something like, we seek and seek and seek until one day we realize the secret is within us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Yeah.
that seeking of the grail, although, in the Arthurian legend, we're seeing it through more of a hero's journey perspective, as if the grail is like a golden goblet you're going to find on an altar somewhere that a king's just drinking wine out of,
Mm.
right? The quest begins there because that's the kind of initiatory beginning that we need to begin that development of who we are. And ultimately, it's something we find within ourselves,
Yeah.
right? It's not an object in the external world that we're bringing back like a chest of gold,
Yeah. It's
right?
not a destination, it's more a seed that has always been there all along.
Right. And that's, I mean, that's, one of the things I love so much about the Gene Keys is in that, evolution of consciousness from the shadow to the gift to the city, right? The divine gift, the divine essence, that city is present in the shadow,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And without the seed, without that shadow as the fuel, the sort of flower of that divine essence can't bloom. It's all connected,
Mm.
right? And so that is part of this evolution here is, as we go within on this heroine's journey, and there's a level of, the human experience, the loss, the grief, the repression, the denial, the shame, the guilt, right? The power struggles, the separation, all of that in our human experience is part of this descent and really reaching this point within ourselves where we can't just manufacture a gift out of all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's we do have the power as these alchemists, to transmute this, to witness it, to feel it, to let it move, to let it be what it is without identifying with it or shaming it or blaming it or whatever. But there's a certain, just like nature has its timing, there might be a flower that only blooms once every 100 years. There's there's a process that's necessary in all of this, and our quest, right, is different in each of these phases.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we are willing to face, right, it's a different kind of courage that the heroine needs
Yeah.
than the hero
Yeah.
needed. Different
Yeah.
muscles, being with the death, the uncertainty, the unknown, the darkness, the the fear, different kinds of fears too, right? It's like there's more of a
Yes.
survival in the hero, and in the heroine, it's more about belonging, right? It's
Yeah.
more about who are my people?
Yeah.
Like, who am I in relation to them? How am I serving the all, the whole, something bigger than myself? And we kind of, we need that reconnection in those relationships for us to build in a new way, right?
Mm.
That is where the synarchy comes from. It's like, everyone at the table with their own role, with their own part to play, their own music to play, and all of that sort of harmonizing while honoring that individual within
Yeah.
it.
Mm.
That's a very, that's like a symphony.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
requires all of us to be in our own curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
right? And whatever classroom we've been assigned. And yet there is a universal map in a certain way that is guiding us, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
These, larger cycles of the story that we're living. And if we can locate ourselves in that, there's no, it's not a linear map that we can have where we, right? Where it's like, here's the address I'm at, and here's the address I'm going to, and here are my exact moves to get there. But there's a certain comfort in seeing ourselves and
Yeah.
seeing each other in a more compassionate way, in a more accepting way,
Mm-hmm.
and also allowing that to kind of reshape within our culture what we value,
Yeah.
what we see as, right? Like allowing that hierarchical kind of structure of the hero to crumble, right? And not trying to fit ourselves into that narrative still. That's
Mm.
not what we're living,
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm
right?
hearing from you, Christina, is that perhaps in the hero's journey there is this orientation towards the destination, right? But maybe in the heroine's journey, it is more about identifying the locks and the keys
Mm-hmm.
and having a relationship, right, with kind of this darker, more obscure terrain so that you can use the right key for the right lock. Does that kind of relate to what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Hmm.
And when the hero kind of brings back the boon, right, to
Mm.
share with the community. And what does the heroine bring back after that descent, right? When she comes back into, let's call it the ordinary world,
Hmm.
um, she brings herself as the
Yeah,
gift,
yeah, yeah,
her wholeness,
yeah.
her embodiment, her integration.
Wow.
She is the gift,
Yeah.
right? And so anything she creates from that place of compassion, open heartedness, you know, wholeness, acceptance, these different kind of qualities of the victory, right? That that kind of integration or unification within the self, that's the gift she brings back. And then when we think about, okay, what's kind of the final act of this story, right? As we move into more of the new myth, this mystic's journey, then now we're really creating something new,
Yeah.
right? And that is, if the hero's slaying the dragon, the heroine's befriending the dragon, the mystic is becoming the dragon. you know so
Yes.
that's a completely different level of, right, when we can, integrate and unify our humanity with our divinity,
Mm.
right? Which is, what the mystic, the level of merge and unification and kind of coming together. If the hero's the I, the heroine's the we, the mystic is the all,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
that is kind of the Siddhic level of
Yes.
the gene keys in a certain way, and not in the way that, we can kind of have, I think, even misconceptions about this idea, right? Certain enlightened beings or living avatars or something. It's like, it doesn't mean that we're
Yes.
all walking around like Indian saints,
Yeah.
although that's possible. We've seen it already. There's a miraculous state of creation that we can be in, certainly.
Mm.
But I think, from our level of consciousness now, it's hard for us to imagine what that world looks like. And we may not see it in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But we are huge building blocks. The
Yeah.
story that we're living now is paving the way for this evolution of this planet, of our species, of,
Hmm.
you know, something even in, 20 years, I think we can't conceive of what our lives will be, how we'll be interacting, what even in the last 5 years, there's been so much change, right? And so this
Definitely.
whole lifetime is, a kind of movement and
Yeah.
transition between like huge archetypal cycles ending and beginning,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I want to narrow this down into the context of your work, Christina, and the
Mhm.
work that you do helping people tell their stories, understand where they're at in their stories. And I want to kind of begin this chapter of our exploration through asking you, what do you mean when you said the word transformational story?
Mm. Yeah. So, a big part of how my work evolved
Mm.
was a kind of merging of more of my past life hero's journey in the publishing industry in New York City and the New York Times and all these things that I wasn't sure where all of that was leading.
Mm.
But sort of in tandem, there was a parallel path where I was on my own heroine's journey and in a deep alchemical process of self-discovery and healing and, you know, evolving in a new way that there weren't a lot of maps for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that at least sort of in the dimension of the reality that I was in New York was not what people were doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to double click on that because I listened to your conversation with Aaron about this, and it's quite first of all, it's quite amazing to hear your story and very relatable for me as well because you were talking about, going to the office at Times
Yeah.
Square, but also, spending all your time training as an intuitive and
Right.
studying with these teachers of different wisdom traditions. Yeah, and it, it it's really cool for me to hear that you were kind of living both actually
Yeah.
concurrently. You're also a manifesting generator, so that really tracks.
It's true. And thank God for, just learning more about my design and
Yeah.
the permission that gave me sort of in
Mm,
hindsight to see, oh, this all makes sense actually based
yeah.
on, how I'm designed. And I think that's part of my work with people
Mm,
is showing them this deeper, giving them a map for their soul's blueprint, for the story they're living,
yeah.
for their personal mythology, right? If you're believing that you're Percival, but you're actually Persephone,
Mm,
there's a kind of you're disoriented,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so part of it is, and there's many ways to do this, to have this deeper self-knowledge and to be relating to these aspects of yourselves archetypally. And, I find the gene keys, because it's more of a feminine system, it's it's not as like diagnostic as, there's certain elements of that because of the human design connection, but it's more mysterious, it's
Yeah.
it's more of that ocean of consciousness that you can enter at any point and go as deep as you can meet it.
Mm-hmm.
It requires your own contemplation and co-creation and participation in a way that really relates with, how I help guide people through the process of, they sort of believe, okay, I have this call, I've lived all these incredible things, and I want to write a book. I want to share my story. I want it to be of benefit for people.
Mm.
And, the way I sort of distinguish the transformational story, um, and a lot of it is just based on what I lived through myself,
Yeah.
right? That was my starting point, and merging my sort of mythical, archetypal, symbolic, alchemical, deep diving nerd on one side, which I wasn't really relating to my career or what I was doing in publishing or,
Mm.
as a journalist or editorially or any of these things, right? And allowing all of that to come together, it was like it just opened up so much. And of course, the divine hand, right? It's like I kept being sent people who had a very, right, at the time. Now there's things that are more mainstream that are kind of more people are talking about. It's not a big deal to be doing medicine or doing these other things. But,
Mm.
you know, 10, 15 years ago, there was a different culture around many of the things that are now kind of more mainstream or accepted in a certain
Yes.
way, right?
Yes.
And so I was I was kind of the weirdo in the room at the New York Times in a good way, where I'd get all the really interesting stories. They'd be
Mm.
like, oh, this is about, the Integratron, this kind of like alien sound healing thing out in the desert in California. Give that one to Christina, right? And, or like, this is about, meditation retreats that are doing XYZ. It's like, yeah,
Mm.
Christina's, give that one to her.
Mm-hmm.
So even then, when I didn't think I was kind of showing myself for those deeper parts of me, people were picking up on it already. But,
Definitely. Yeah. We are
as
never as
people,
far in the closet
right.
as we think we are.
It's so true. It's so true. And so the people who were coming to me who had a story to tell, they're, because I love archetypes, it's like I have a pattern recognition thematically and symbolically that I can see
Yes.
that, the people who were coming to me who didn't just want an editor,
Mm.
right? They wanted someone who had done all the other things I'd done. They wanted someone who had gone to India and like done shadow work and, you know, faced the demons and the dragons and, all of it, and who they could talk to about, these things that maybe in their industry or in their group of friends or in their family were these kind of taboo things at the time,
Yes.
right? And so there was this kind of intersection that my life created that people came to me for. And in, sometimes they would have a finished manuscript. Sometimes we would, kind of start more from the excavation phase of like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of stories here. How do we want to design this? Right.
Yeah.
But I was noticing that the things I could see about people, about their stories, this is even early on before I was even working with design, before I knew that much about my own design. I was just kind of starting to dip my toes in around like 2016. And so, archetypally, I could see these patterns that were very obvious to me, and I could sort of
Mm.
structure things for people in seeing the story they were living and the story they wanted to tell in this very unique way to them, right? So, not a kind of self help. There's all kinds of different equations in publishing across the
Mm-hmm.
board, whether that's in magazines, news, books, whatever. There's kind of the equation of the time. Sometimes it changes by like one variable, but in general, if you read enough books or magazines or whatever, you'll pick up on it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so the people who are coming to me, they wanted something different. They didn't want to just plug into that equation. And so initially, as this started to develop, I realized I was repeating myself a lot in
Mm.
terms of how I was sharing a lot of, what I'm sharing now, but just very specifically to someone's individual design and journey and path, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't, sort of mentally or intellectually design anything I teach. It was just a kind of synthesis
Mm.
that I could see that I realized after a couple years of repeating myself with all these one-on-one clients that people weren't seeing what I was seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people probably hadn't, like me, like ultra deep dive nerd, read thousands of books
Mm.
about these things and like, had these direct experiences, right? Where all of that, it's sort of the alchemy of it living in you, right?
Mm.
It's the combination of the knowledge and the experience that creates the wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was almost like, and this is very, Manny Jen style, it's like all of it started just getting pulled out of me because I was
Yeah.
responding
Yeah.
to things that
Yeah.
were there. And so over time, the process that I now call story map, which, and kind of helping people understand the genre of
Mm.
what a transformational story is, right? So within
Yes.
within book publishing, there's more like, let's say, standard ways they would refer to certain genres. But overall, there's a kind of, we could call it creative nonfiction, where within that, it's there's a kind of combination, right? Self-help is more about a transformation for the reader. So the reader is more the protagonist
Mm-hmm.
of a self-help or a personal development book.
Right.
A memoir is more about the writer,
Yes.
right? The writer is the protagonist. It may still benefit the reader, right? And then there's a kind of narrative nonfiction, which is more of like, John Krakauer or
Mm.
Susan Orlean or someone who's coming into a story. It's not about
Mm.
them, but they're reporting it in a way that is recreating the story,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's that transformation's happening for someone else. And so there's lots of different angles you can take on this, but I would say the majority of the people I work with in these stories of transformation, which are heroines' journeys,
Mm.
they're always about a journey within, even if they begin, right, with that more of the identification with the masculine
Right.
values, right,
Right.
which can lead to, okay, I've acquired all the money and the power and the status and the this and the New York Times bestseller and whatever, and still I feel empty. Still
Mm.
I feel alone. Still I feel dead inside, right?
Right.
Maureen Murdoch calls it spiritual aridity. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, it's the Fisher King kingdom where the land is barren,
Yes.
right? There's not a drop of the feminine
Mm.
there,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just been sucked. The life has been sucked out of everything,
Yes.
right? And so these stories of transformation, they do typically, let's say thematically and kind of in terms of the phases of individuation, it's typically a heroine's journey.
Mm.
But
Mm-hmm.
how you orient to that, how you structure that, the choices you make about how you're going to design the foundation of that book, right? And who you're serving and what the perspective is, what the theme is. Are you, is it more the reader as the protagonist that you're serving? Is it more the writer in reflection about the story they've lived, right? More of a
Mm.
memoir style.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of blending of genres and things like that too, right? I'm
Yes.
kind of being general here. But, this a story of transformation requires that inner descent. It requires some level of living through that loss,
Yes.
whatever it is, right?
Yes.
That's the involuntary call of the heroine's journey, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so there are many of those calls within the life that we're living now,
Mm.
current now moment on earth as
Mm-hmm.
humans
Mm-hmm.
in this kind of insanity of one world dying and another being born, and the totality of how our humanity is engaging with that, how our divinity is engaging with that, how where we are within that cycle. And so, the people who are coming to me to do this work, to really create the map, create the plan on the front end. And honestly, that's the heavier lift,
Yeah.
to do it up front.
Yeah.
It's more challenging. That's why people skip it. And
Mm.
they jump to phase two and they're like, I'm going to write my book. And they spend 7 years dumping a bunch of words into a
Yeah.
Word document.
Yep.
And then they come to me and I ask them very simple questions that they can't answer,
Yes. Yes.
right? Because
Can
they've
can you
skipped.
speak about the three phases, Christina?
Yeah, it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like I see, the initial phase as what I've created in Story Map, which is just the kind of, I sort of equate it to building a house. It's like
Yep.
you need the architectural blueprint
Mm.
before you're buying the materials, hiring contractors, hiring an interior designer, planting your landscape. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
there's the phase one of that outline and mapping is crucial
Yeah. Yeah.
to having something. And it's not that it doesn't change, it's just that once you understand the foundational elements and you've got that blueprint and that plan, you can always adjust things as you go, but you have the understanding
Yes.
of how to do that. And just like building a house, it's a family affair. It's a team effort. It is not
Yeah.
a singular thing where you go to a cabin in the woods and you write a book and you come back and just turn it into an agent and it's
Mm.
published, the end,
Yes.
right? And so phase two is more of that writing and editing.
Yeah.
But when you're doing that with a plan, that's actually a very easy part of the process,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
because the structure and the understanding and the foundation you've set, then that flow of, okay, I know which stories I'm telling at which part, I know why I'm telling those stories,
Mm.
and I've got a structure that feels really unique to me, that isn't just
Yes.
A plus B equals C. And you'll see this in a lot of the kind of prescriptive nonfiction books, which are more like the self-help kind of personal development world. There's a very cookie cutter format there that, walk into any bookstore and open 3 books in that section and you'll see the same format,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so the people that come to me, and maybe this is part of my own 6 line medicine, my late bloomer medicine, and also that visionary, right? Who's here to create something that lasts,
Mm.
who will take the time,
Yeah.
right? And even if all goes to plan, right? If you have a great team, you have all the materials you need, you have the architectural blueprint, you have everything to plan, right? Same with building a house. Even if it
Mm.
goes seamlessly,
Mm.
it's still going to take you about 3 years,
Yes.
right? So it's also kind of like helping people orient to the process in a way where there's plenty of people and robots and things you can go to bang it out and do the quick fix and just like, spit something out there.
Ta-da.
Ta-da, not
Yes.
me. That's not what I'm here to do. That's not what I'm here to support people in doing.
Yeah.
And so the people who are coming to me they have that grail question alive in
Mm-hmm.
them. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, I've lived this story.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to be part of my own integration to tell that story and to share
Yes.
this gift that I have, that I am, and that I have witnessed and experienced. And there is a service beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
There is a kind of like transmission of consciousness, right? Like it's it is like a diamond you're forging that you're
Yes.
then leaving as part of who you are and your legacy and like what you've lived. And so if you're doing that from a place of really deep embodiment and service and legacy, you're not banging that out,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yep.
And because you understand that actually part of your own transformation, and I see this just over and over and over again, is even when people have really, they're in the integration from that heroine's journey, right? They've done the dark night, they've descended, they've transmuted, they've reclaimed, they've done a real full version director's
Yes.
cut quest
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
those inner worlds, and they're back and they're integrating and they're like, okay, next quest. It's time for me to share this story. And no matter what, right, you will be transformed in that process, even if
Yes.
you've already lived it,
Yes. It's
right?
it's
And
like a whole nother cycle of
yes,
transformation. Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it is understanding that, giving the space and kind of grace for yourself to go through that, right? And there's a beautiful example of a dear friend and client of mine who did my story map group, the last one I ran in 2022.
Mm.
And at the time, she was a new mother. She had roughly, I think, maybe a 1 year old, 1.5 year old, something like that, maybe a 1 year old. And she wanted to, her book's called The Mother Year. And she wanted to write about this first year of
Mm.
motherhood. She wanted to create the resource that wasn't there for her, essentially,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And she had amazing amounts of, like, she'd left herself voice notes through the whole thing. She had taken all these amazing notes, like, and just through the process of the story map. I mean, she came in with the title, which is unusual for the real title to come in first. People always want to title their book before they can answer any questions about it. She's one of the very few people who had a title at the beginning. And I was like, that's it.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
she had a really solid idea, great title, great concept, really clear like motivation and intention in terms of who she was serving, who she was talking to, who her reader was.
Yeah.
And yet there was still a lot for us we looked at, okay, how can we shape this kind of year-long cycle of this initiation into motherhood, right? And so the kind of structure and model I worked with her on was the seasons,
Yes.
and kind of creating these seasons of that first year of motherhood. And so we're in this process. Through our work also had some really great experiences just connecting with her reader. And that kind of opened up a whole new world of her work, of her
Mm.
connections, of her community. And then she got pregnant
Wow.
in the process. And she was
Wow.
like, oh no. I mean, so many reasons to just be like, okay, I'll get back to this 10 years from now.
Right.
Right. I have like basically a 1 year old. I'm pregnant again. I'm going to go through this first year again.
Again.
Right. It was like, so you can't make this shit up. I mean, it was like so on point. And it was so beautiful to, be a kind of a guide for her and a touch point in this process of her. She had to recommit all over again. And she
Mm.
had to live through that first year all over again. And
Yep.
imagine what that did for the book,
Wow.
for the content, for
Yep.
herself,
Yep. Yep.
right? She went through a whole new cycle of that heroine's journey and that initiation. Yes, this time with more understanding,
Yes.
right? And yet it was a completely different journey, as
Yes.
any mother will tell you. It's like every pregnancy is different, every child is different, all of it. And so her book actually came out this year. And that's and she really stuck with it. She had to really recommit and
Mm.
go through all of the phases, right? So after the writing and editing, right, you have the outline and the mapping. Phase two, writing and editing. Phase three is when you think about, okay, how do I want to publish this? How do I want to kind of launch this into the world? How am I creating this, connection? Because even if you're going a traditional route, which I would recommend that for like 5% of people. There's
Mm.
there's really doesn't make sense in a lot of ways to be working in that old system for certain people with certain intentions. I've worked with people who have gone the traditional route or with the big five or whatever.
Yep.
But typically, that process, there's a kind of hybrid way you can go. There's
Mm.
also more of like a fully kind of individual publishing, self-publishing route you can go. But there's so many ways to design it now.
Yeah.
And in that final phase, and even with her book tour, it was like all of it got to be designed completely differently,
Right.
right? Because she's
Right.
a mom. And
Right.
so her book tour wasn't some big, I'm on the road for 3 months straight, hitting all these cities, no,
Yeah.
she did like one place every month or two. She spanned it over. It actually just ended. So it started in the spring, ended in the fall. She did really like intentional places where she had community and wanted to build more community with mothers. She did them in these really unique locations where like moms could come with their kids. It was, it had all kinds of different um just ways to nourish them in the event
Yeah.
and, circles and sharing. And she's just such a great example to me of she, a lot. She had a really great plan and she kind of moved through all of those phases in order.
Mm.
And it still took her 3 years
Yeah.
and it still required a completely, like, even a deeper level of surrender and initiation
Yeah.
for her in that second round,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. To me, this really is such a beautiful example of what you said earlier that really caught my attention about transformational story being about transmission of consciousness
Hmm.
and also beautifully illustrates the idea of, how the heroine brings back herself.
Yeah.
Even just that um, part of the story where she's pretty much almost done with the draft and then she got pregnant again. Right? It's like more of herself wants to come
Yeah.
through. Um, and and this is also reminding me of something you've written over the years, Christina, about the idea of the choice points, right? And
Yeah.
and the choice points being connected. I'm going to read something that you wrote actually. This was in 2022. You wrote, "What I can see after so many years, decades on this path of transformation, is that the choice points never end. They're an intricate and precious part of our curriculum on Earth. And our choices truly shape our reality when we claim our power as divine creators. So, rather than the choices getting easier, the stakes getting lower, or the pressure dissipating when I reach a crossroads, I become more skillful in the face of conditioned fears. I become more centered in the uncertainty. I become more willing to be disliked and misunderstood. My values, my integrity, my power as a creator, all of these are refined in the training ground of choice." And that really moved me because when I first read it, it felt to me that you were talking about life. But in this moment, when you were telling the story of one of your friend and client, um, that's also true of our artistic journey, right? There are a
Yes.
lot of choices that we have to make in along the artistic journey, the process of writing a book, the process of, witnessing our own story and sharing that with the world, that uh, becomes, as you said, the training ground
Yeah.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so powerful, and I feel like I'm gonna plant a little Easter egg for our next conversation about Jeff Buckley
Yes.
because and there's just so many gems sort of in his design and in his story and in his early departure
Mm,
and what he
hmm.
left us with.
Yeah.
And this is such a the journey we're living, the story we're living, what we make of it is our art.
Mm,
So whether that's a book, an album, a painting, a child, a farm,
mm,
you know, whatever it may be, right? It's like the Toltec call it, artist of the spirit.
mm.
It's like our life is our art. And
Yes.
the choices that we're making, right? That may take what we sort of label as artistic form, meaning a work of art, a
Mm,
sculpture,
hmm.
a song, a story. And yet, there is another level of that, which is like, I am my work of art,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And whatever I create with an open heart and, you know, with my totality as a human and as a divine creator, that is my legacy. That is my gift. That is my art form,
Yes.
right? And, you know, the journey itself, and this is kind of, what I was referencing earlier about it not being this kind of linear one and done thing. We don't just do the hero and then the heroine and then the mystic and
Hmm.
we're good.
Yeah.
We, ascend to nirvana. It's, it's different parts of us, different aspects of us are in different parts of this journey at all times.
Yes.
We're constantly crossing that threshold to die to
Yeah.
ourselves and move into that descent, that underworld, that purification, that shadow of the part of ourselves we haven't yet seen. And that's infinite, right?
Hmm.
The thresholds we cross and you can think of them as tests. You can think of them as choices.
Yeah.
It's like we will constantly be creating, right? Life is growth,
Mm, hmm.
right? Life is change. That's,
Yes.
that's what the I Ching is all about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Book of Changes. It's like, here's the map. There is an archetypal like layout to this kind of binary code of life that we're living here. And there are infinite ways that all of this can come together. And so, especially as, I believe everyone's creative, but I will say, as people who have chosen a personal and or professional life as a creative in
Mm,
some kind of creative, art or discipline or service, um, it's kind of a double whammy in a certain way, right? But that's also how the art is alive, is
yeah.
because of the life we're living.
Yeah.
That ordinary life is what makes it's like that's the soil
Yes.
of our own transformation, our own creativity, our invention, our mystery, our magic, right? And there are so many examples we have in science, in music, in mythology,
Yeah.
in cooking, whatever it may be. Like that's one of the things I love about Chef's Table is it really tells this this journey where you see like it's just so much more than this beautiful food that in itself is art, yes.
Right.
But like
Right.
in order for, we really see the journey that it took for these geniuses in whatever field it may be to take this journey that we've been talking about today, which is I'm constantly given the choice of whether to grow, evolve, change, step into the unknown again,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Even if it's the same, right? Like with the motherhood example, it's like, okay, I have already been pregnant, given birth, have a child. Now I'm going to do it again. And yes, I have done it once, but it doesn't mean that I know anything about how it's going to happen this time, right?
Right.
And
Right.
as creatives, I feel like, especially like there's so much value in, yes, story map is about outlining a book and really setting the foundation for that and understanding that. But this is also work just in a one-on-one, more of a one-on-one or like a retreat container that I do with people who are not necessarily writing a book.
Yes.
It's like, it's just about seeing themselves and the story they're living in a way that they can bring more awareness
Mm.
and more creativity and more of themselves to each one of those choices that we're making every day
Yes.
as humans, as
Yes.
creators, as parents, as friends, as partners, as business partners, whatever that may be. And that is why, you know, all of us, if we can see that we are all living our own version of the heroine's journey, and yes, we need to do that within ourselves. And we can also be allies and be comrades and in relationship with one another in a way that honors that
Mm.
and can support. That's what the heroine's journey is all about, right?
Yeah.
It's about strength in numbers. It's about collaboration. It's about
Yeah.
coming together and collectively that is the story we're living. That is the part of the myth that we're in. And so that is, to come back to our first sentence, the hero is dead, guys. Like stop trying to revive, you know, that.
Part of the cycle.
Yeah,
Hmm.
or just kind of
Yeah.
that, like, that's where, of course, the comfort is there. There's this old kind of hamster wheel you can be running. It's like, but I really feel like a large percentage of people, even if they may not agree about, how to build what's coming next, a lot of people are realizing that equation and trying to plug themselves into that script is not working anymore.
It's losing its juice.
And the
Yeah.
systems that were built on that are not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it's, and there's a kind of other layer to what that means, which is like the hero needs to die
Mm.
to go within on this heroine's
Yes.
journey. You need to walk across that threshold and say, look, I have built this I am
Mm.
comfortable in this identity. It is easier for me to stay in
Yeah.
my little box where everything is known and I have a plan and I have a map. And if you're here, if you're still here in a human body, there's more growth for
Mm.
you.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
eventually, as the heroine's journey does, it will come for you in some way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if we can just have more of an orientation and awareness to this, it's not that it's going to make it easier for us or that we can skip the steps or that we can, you know, have the robot do it for us. It's just, it gives us a little more, just like when you're watching I don't know, the Titanic, the ship's going to sink at the
Yes.
end. We all We all began that 3 hour movie knowing how it was going to end. We still watched it. We still cried. We still
Yes.
had our human experience
Mm.
with getting from point A to point B, right?
Yeah.
There was no surprise
Yeah.
ending there.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, we can just, there's a lot of grace in just being with what is and seeing ourselves and the story we're living, really confronting it,
Mm.
just facing it,
Mm-hmm.
seeing it for what it is, and moving through whatever we need to move through
Yeah.
emotionally, mentally, whatever, to say, hey, like, I'm gonna at some point I'm gonna cross this threshold. That is an inevitability on a human level. We're born, we die.
Yeah.
We know it's coming, right? And the Tibetans, right, just help us practice that every day. So we can do that, right? So we're not hiding from it or brushing it under the rug or, trying to hide it. Just the story, that's how it ends, guys.
Yeah.
And that's not how it ends, right? On a
Yeah.
higher level of consciousness.
Yeah.
But there's a certain part of us that when we can just face, like, okay, I did the I quest, I
Mm.
built the me, I
Mm.
I did the things, right? In the world, right? And I think this story will change, the more collectively that we orient to this heroine's journey and these systems fall and we do begin to build a kind of from the ground up grassroots new version
Mm.
of this world we're living and how we do business and how we raise our families and all these things, there will be a point at which we're just in the new story.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no like somebody's trying to run the hero's journey track and we're all doing this. It's like there's a
Exactly.
collective kind of tipping point where we're just, we really are on the new set entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that could come in our lifetime.
I
You know,
remember, Christina, maybe about a year ago, right before we started working together, I read this email from Krista Tippett announcing
mm,
that she was downsizing the On Being team.
mm-hmm,
And I remember very vividly, I was on vacation. I was in the middle of Tokyo, and my partner was checking out, some souvenirs that we were bringing back, and I was just weeping. You can see the picture here. That's why I remembered it so well, because I was like just weeping in this department store, and I had no idea why. And I realized at that moment, even within myself, as someone who deeply appreciates Krista's work, um, I I was starved of that story.
mm,
I was starved of the story of someone who has built something amazing and said, you know what? The seasons have changed. I have changed, and we are going to say goodbye to this with a lot of dignity.
yeah,
And I realized, oh, we don't have a lot of that example, and we're not necessarily taught how to do that well.
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's huge. And I do, there's such deep medicine, in
yeah,
the gene keys, especially
yeah.
related to this, which I, even in that choice point, I remember what you're pulling from in that choice point quote that you brought. And part of that, part of us being with what is and having the courage to face the end
Mm,
with dignity, with grace, with gratitude,
yeah,
not make it a failure,
mm,
not make it somebody did something wrong, so this is over.
yeah,
Um, we really are, and to me, that's a kind of reflection of our relationship with nature in a certain way, and kind of more of the
mm,
hero's journey cycle of the like produce, 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 more, 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 variety, better, bigger, faster, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an imbalance there,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that is what the feminine brings in. Is like life is beautiful and death is beautiful. There's a
Yes.
natural cycle to every season, to every
Mm-hmm.
beginning, to every ending. And rather than overriding that or making ourselves wrong or someone else wrong or the system wrong or whatever, can that just be natural?
Yeah.
Can we, face that in ourselves and in our creations, in our businesses, in our relationships, in our partnerships, in whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Can we just bring that truth, that honesty, that reverence forward and let that be completely natural
Yeah.
and just part of life? And I think that's, especially with, I would say, what we would see as untimely death, right? Or
Mm.
someone leaving too soon or things we
Mm-hmm.
can't explain. Um, that is kind of our involuntary initiation into that sometimes, right? Is just something being taken, something being, someone leaving, whatever it is.
Mm.
And I do feel like there are some really beautiful examples. And I love that you brought the Krista Tippett piece because that was done with a lot of, there was a lot of thoughtfulness in that. There was a lot of care in that. There was a lot of respect
Absolutely.
in it. And I would love more examples
Yeah. Yeah.
of that.
I do too. Um, I can talk to you for another
I know.
4 days, Christina. We have
This
to
is why
bring
part
our
two is coming at
we
some
have to
point.
bring our lembas bread next time. Um, so I want to wind us down. I have one more question, and then I'd love for you to talk about story map. But my question for you is, you shared with me your Osho essay, and there was
Mm-hmm.
there was a small piece in there that really caught my attention, where you were briefly alluding to an experience when you were younger, where you felt like um, you don't even deserve to tell your story,
Mm,
and that really struck a chord for me because I've seen that within myself. I've also seen that within a lot of clients that I work with. So,
mm.
my question to you is, what advice or what counsel would you give that younger version of you?
Such a great question. Um, that vision, that experience that I had with that younger me, it was almost like my creative spark was, it wasn't put out, but it was really diluted
Mm,
or, kind of like, when there are a bunch of coals or embers and you're kind of shovel ash on it to try to um, suffocate it.
yeah, yeah.
It's like that's kind of the symbolic image.
Mm,
And, you know, kind of coming back to a lot of what we've been talking about today, there was something I was here to create that didn't exist yet. And so the environment I was in couldn't see that part of me.
right.
It couldn't bring that forward. It couldn't honor that. It couldn't inspire me. It just shut it down because
Yeah.
it didn't understand what what this was, right? it
Mm,
was it was this like, and within myself, and this again, like a lot of the six line medicine of being a late bloomer, it's like I had to really fan that flame, that creative impulse in me, this desire to do something different,
Mm.
to create something that doesn't exist. I don't have a role model for what I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't have a map. I don't have an example. And so that younger part of me in getting that shut down in this way that, sort of the symbolic image of I'm trying to make something that someone else witnesses and doesn't understand. And so they sort of suffocate that without giving it the air it needs to breathe
Yeah.
or being curious,
Mm.
right? Just because that's not, right? That's not the set I was on. That's not the story that was going on there. And so that part of me, I talk to that part of me a lot. So I say a lot of things to that part of me. Um, but what I would say to someone else who resonates with that feeling of, I've lived this incredible story, or I have this dream to create something that doesn't exist, that I don't quite, have an inspiration I can follow or a role model that can show me, number one, that it's possible.
Mm.
Number two, how it's possible, right? Um, this this is really, it's like some deep medicine in a combination of the evolution of what we've been talking about today, where it's like, how can I continue to nurture and nourish and excite and inspire that part of me
Mm.
and give it courage
Mm.
to almost begin the whole cycle again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that part of me actually needs to develop the I
Yeah.
that says, I can do this. I don't
Mm.
need someone else to be doing it or to show me how to do it or to tell me that it's possible. I can cultivate that within myself. And yet, here we go to the heroine. There are allies for
Mm.
me, right?
Mm.
There are people that can support me in bringing it to life.
Yeah. I don't have to do it alone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the thing I do need to do alone, this is the threshold, this is the choice point,
Mm.
is decide I'm doing it
Mm.
and
Yeah,
that I
that's the
will figure it out.
paradox.
Right. And that I
Yeah.
will like persevere and I will take each next step. And I don't need to know
Mm.
how it's going to turn out. I don't need someone else who can show me XYZ, whatever. I
Yeah.
do need the courage to be honest with myself, to initiate myself. And that's another theme with, the kind of transformational stories or the people I work with. It's like a lot of people, myself included, Aaron included, you know, when you have that power to self initiate and to say, I'm doing this, there's
Mhm.
no one else who's doing this. I have no map. I have no idea how I'm going to get there. Like that choice creates the conditions for
Mm.
the allies to come. And then you need to have the courage to, and the humility to ask for help,
Yeah.
to know who and kind of what are the things you need and to see, okay, I have these strengths. I could really use support in these other ways. That doesn't make me weak. That doesn't make me wrong. That doesn't make this impossible. This makes me human.
Yes.
And, part of that discernment and a kind of like healthy discrimination in a certain way, right?
Mm.
To a certain, it's like to tuning to that resonance of the soul fractal, of the mission allies, the comrades that are in that, their unique gifts.
Mm.
And it's their service to come in and there's a kind of reciprocity in the co-creation in that way, not a power struggle, not an old world transactional energy, there's like something that really blossoms in that. And
Yeah.
that's I feel like I'm really on both sides of that equation, like as someone who
Mm.
supports other people in that and being that guide and being, in my gifts and saying, here's how I can support this process, this
Yeah.
story coming to life in a way that's going to be true to you. It's not
Yes.
some cookie cutter thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to take some time. And also, you've got the support you need. And there's like, there's more to this than the product or the destination. And if you're willing to do that, like I'll go as deep, you know,
Mm.
as you want to go. Like I'm
Yeah.
here to walk with someone
Yeah.
through some real depths. Here comes the Scorpio full moon, activity. I'm been in that underworld and you've got to make the choice. But
Mm.
once the choice is made, and I see this for myself in my own writing and in this sort of legacy work that I'm creating, like I need the version of me to help me,
Yeah.
right? Even with the gifts I've developed in this way, yeah, that helps me to a certain point,
Mm.
and then there's the part of me that's the protagonist that's like, okay, I need help
Yeah.
for my allies.
Yeah.
How can we come together and all be in this beautiful service to life and to something beyond ourselves and do that in a way where everyone is empowered
Mm.
and we are in reciprocity and there is like so much beauty that can come of that when we can be in both the I and the we,
Mm.
right? When we can say, here are my strengths and here's where I need help,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
that really I'm living that and learning it every day. There's no end to it, but I do feel that commitment over time and that devotion of the now into my second decade of doing this.
Mm.
Like there is a level of cultivation in that inner world where the part of me that you read about, right? She's alive and well,
Yeah.
right? She's not hiding in a corner anymore, like
Yeah.
with a bunch of ash dumped on her head, right?
Yes.
And so it's not that it, like in the choice point writing, it's like it doesn't get easier. It's not, if anything, the stakes get higher
Yeah.
because you have more capacity and your growth edge is going to continue evolving and changing and expanding with you,
Mm.
So
Mhm. Thank you.
yeah,
That's really
thank you.
beautiful. Hmm.
This has been like just just my favorite conversation about any of this. And
I cannot agree more. I mean, I'm really happy to hear that, but I'm just soaking in so much of your wisdom here. Thank you. Thank you, Christina. It's
thank you so
really
much.
such a privilege to have you. Um, would you say, a few words about your program? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So story map, depending on the moment you're listening to this, if you're listening to
true.
this in October 2025,
Mhm.
um, I am about to lead a group through this story math process. It's a 4-month journey where we really go into a lot of the foundational elements um, of the story you have lived and also the design of how you can tell it in a way that's really unique to you and focused on this kind of phase one of the architecture of doing that in a way that is very supportive for the phases to come, for the writing, for the
Mm.
editing, for the choices about how you want to publish and who you want to work with. All of this really lays the foundation. And this is the work I do one on one with people, but you know, every 3 years, apparently, that's the last time I got the call. The group kind of comes forward in a way where there's a whole other dimension to the work when you're doing it kind of with those mission comrades and learning from one another
Right.
in the process. So that starts this month. Applications are open now. I'm kind of curating the group in a way that will feel resonant,
Mm.
just for everyone. And so there's a short application just to share more about who you are and your story. And if you're hearing this in a future now moment, um, this is really, despite the many times I've tried to run from this work, this is part of what I'm doing here. So I'm sure this exists in some form in whatever future now moment you're listening to this
Mm.
in. And so, yeah, the group's going to be really special. And we start applications close October 20th.
Mm.
Um, and we go from October to February. And I'm sitting with, there may be an in-person thing we do at the end of that. But I would say,
Mm.
to anyone who's resonated, if you're, especially if you're listening, you're still listening and this is
Yeah.
resonating.
Yeah.
Um, and this calls to you in some way. Honestly, even if you don't know what form it's going to take, there have been a lot of
Mm.
people I've worked with that it took different forms than a
Yeah.
book. It wasn't
Yeah.
about necessarily them writing a book, but it was about a kind of creative expression, whether that was artistically, musically, other.
Mm.
There are other forms that this can take because this serves, I mean, this is who you are and what you're here to do, the story you're living, your personal myth. Like that's everything. It's at the foundation of everything you're creating, every relationship, your business, your creativity, all of it. So typically it's someone who's inspired to write a book, but I also, have seen the examples of how it's just a very transformational process for people.
Yeah.
And some of the Gene Keys magic is woven in there as part of the group and just helping you understand that personal myth that you're living. And yeah, it's gonna be very spacious. Every other week we're
Mm.
meeting and just a good group of art-led divine creators. So I'm sure Jonathan will put something in the show notes
Amazing.
about where you can
Yes.
find that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for tuning in, for listening. And I just love talking to you, Jonathan. I feel like we
Thank you,
could.
Christina. I feel the same way.
I'm excited about part two also. We'll
We'll have to get it in the books. Yeah. I
yes.
think it will be really, really special. And just to kind of give a little spoiler here, um, part of our process, dear listeners, Christina sent me three different topics, and I, in my Pisces sun enthusiasm, is like, I think this can all be one conversation. And the other conversation we haven't really had is, one of Christina's geniuses is the gene keys. And Christina really works with people, creatives, individuals, leaders to um, tell their story from the perspective of their gene keys. And we're going to explore that in part two.
Yes. Stay
We're going
tuned.
to
It's
talk about
coming.
Christina's story, a little bit about my story, and Christina's current obsession, Jeff Buckley.
I mean, long-standing obsession, but
Long standing.
there's some good juice there.
Mm,
And with you as a musician and a music
yeah,
lover, and
yeah,
my past life as a music journalist,
yeah.
and
I
the
did not know that
lifelong.
about you, by the way.
Yeah, that's
That's
music is
so
my
cool.
is my first love,
Mm,
and
hmm.
because of that, it's one of the reasons I left music journalism, actually. But I'm excited for that conversation. I feel like there's a whole other world we can explore there. Um,
Treasure trove.
I know. So we'll do some behind the scenes kind of shares and
Yeah,
figure out when we can have that conversation. But I am very excited
great.
for part two of our deep dive
Same.
into the mysteries.
Yes. Thank you, Christina. This has been amazing. I feel like I will be returning to this conversation many, many times. I know it for sure, and I know many listeners will as well. Um, so
Yeah.
much of what you shared about the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, the mystic's journey is just so relevant, and I think really in some ways there's a quality about it that's really consciousness expanding to me,
Mm,
and it helps contextualize the times we live in, which, maybe there is part three with you
yeah.
and I and Aaron talking about the
Yes.
shift. Maybe this will be
I
mid
would love that.
2026. Yes. In
It's
preparation for 2027.
exactly. That's like a whole other, wow, that's a whole
Yes.
other world galaxy of a conversation.
Yep. Yep.
I
I think
love
the
it.
two of you have very distinct and unique and much needed perspectives in medicine around the coming shifts, which we're all already living through.
Yes.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you,
I'm
Christina.
excited. Thank you for having me. Thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for tuning in.